Hey guys, in this video I wanted to go over how to do the milling portion of your hammerhead. Now remember, you don't have to make your hammerhead the exact same way I made mine, but if you do decide to, this is kind of how to do it. Now lucky for me, I'm helping McCoy in this video because he pretty much closely modeled his, I should say, he closely modeled his to mine. Um, Now one thing I do want to point out, there is a better way to chuck this thing up in the vise. We could have done it so that one end was hanging off the side. That way, we could have done the flat spot for your handle, where your handle meets up to the head, and we could have done the taper all in one clamp. Instead, we kind of messed it up, and we ended up having to do it, move it over, and then reset it up. What we did is we grabbed the edge finder here, and we put it into the collet, and we zeroed it out on one side, then went to the other side and zeroed it out. This way we could have an overall dimension of that part without measuring it. And then we could take that 0 point and we could find the center of it. And what we did first is we actually cut the flat spot and then the threaded portion for the handle to go into. After we figured out where the center was going to be, went ahead and installed the 3/4 inch carbide cutter. We've used this multiple times, so I'm not going to go over how to set the RPMs or anything like that. Be kind of a watch out. You can go pretty deep in with this thing. It will cut it, but take some smaller cuts. That way you don't mess up your part. Next, we just went ahead and we started, got close here. I'm sorry, my arm was in the way for the whole first cut. So here in a second, we'll get that out of the way. All right, once I got out of the way, you can see we just went back and forth. The first one is pretty much a slot cut, and then at that point, we could kind of work from side to side. And like I said, we went a little bit deep with McCoy's, so take small cuts and then kind of work from there. And as you can see, like I said, we made that slot cut, and then we worked on one side and then the other. I think McCoy actually only did something to the front side. He wanted the hammerhead to be a little bit heavy on the back end. McCoy filed off the edges and just made sure there was no burrs. It's really easy to file off things like this in the file rather than by hand on the table. Next, we went ahead and moved that part over like I was talking about. If we had clamped it like this right from the get-go, we wouldn't have to do this process. And all we're doing is we moved it down on the vise, and then we're going to take that dial indicator and we're going to go ahead and move it back and forth on that flat spot to make sure that it's perfectly perpendicular to that spindle. So we just started on one side and then moved all the way to the other. There's not a great shot of that dial indicator, but the face, we wanted to make sure that dial wasn't spinning at all. It's on 0 and it doesn't move at all. So really easy to do. Takes 5 seconds if you come up to that problem. Once the part had been indicated, we went ahead and reinstalled our 3-inch shell cutter. The next part of the process, we're going to start small, but it's going to get really big. So we just put it in at the beginning. That way we don't have to deal with it. Here I'm showing McCoy what you need to do to move the head over to the side. And notice those 4 bolts that he's taking off right now. He's not loosening those up all the way. He's doing about a half turn or so. Otherwise, when you go to start spinning the head like he is right now, if they were super loose, it would pretty much just fall right over. So it's just easier to do small degrees of change if you don't totally loosen those up. And he's just going back and forth looking at where the dial is on the side to figure out how many degrees he wanted to do. I think originally he was going to do like 60 degrees, and then when we got it all set up, it ended up looking so steep that he he ended up, I think, switching to 30. And I would highly recommend a 30-degree angle on your head if you're going to do it. Seems to be like a pretty good size. Once he got the head where he liked it, he went ahead and torqued it back down. Notice he uses the cross bolting pattern. It's kind of always the best. That way it's on there nice and snug. Here we just went ahead and started running it. Notice we started small. You can do about 30 thousandths per cut. And what he did is he did 30 thousandths one direction and then dropped it down and did 30 thousandths going back. That way there wasn't any wasted motion. Just back and forth until you find the angle that you had either, or I mean the length of angle that you had already decided on, or you like the look. This part's a little bit hard to see, but we went ahead and flipped it over and placed a block under the flat spot where the head is threaded. Yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of didn't do a great job. And we just set that block so that it's at the bottom of the jaw here. That kind of gave us the correct 180 degrees out from our last cut that we needed. Also, it helped to get it lined up side to side. And then we just went ahead and did the exact same operation to this side as we did to the first side. Now you don't have to do your drilling and tapping in this order. The way we set it in the vise at the beginning kind of messed us up for down the road. I would highly recommend doing all the flat work, when you're actually cutting this flat spot, drilling and tapping it right then. That way you don't have to come back. It just saves more time. And then we're just going to go through the process of drilling and tapping now. I think at this point he'd already drilled out that hole to the 27/64 for like a 1/2 inch thread. And now he's just going to thread it. Make sure you use lots and lots of oil. And remember, this is a blind hole. So once you reach the bottom of it, you want to stop and don't continue on, or you'll break that tap off. And more than likely, you won't get it back out, and you will be restarting this project. This concludes how to make the hammerhead or do the hammerhead portions on the mill. I know there's been a lot of questions, so hopefully this clears them up. Again, if you need any help, please come and ask me.